I'm a European immigrant in the US and I'm visiting my home country for the summer, and I have noticed that everything here is very small.
I have a very serious question for all Americans. Is high school life exactly like they portray in the...
This is the only country in the world where anybody from any part of the world can immigrate to and become an American.
Everyone is so friendly. They're so prepared to take the time to help you, to talk to you, to be interested in why you're here. It's amazing.
I felt like I had to be brave to say, I love living in America. I love living in Boston.
Ask a European traveler in early 2024 if they'd visit the United States this year, and most would have said yes without a second thought. Ask that same question today, and the answer has quietly flipped. Not because of a single scandal, not because of one bad headline, but because of a slow, steady accumulation of cost, friction, and doubt that's shown up in the actual numbers. And that's the part almost nobody's video is telling you. If you want the real story behind the World Cup summer everyone's been hyping, stick around, because this one runs against the grain. And if you like stories that go past the surface headline, this is a good moment to subscribe so you don't miss where this series goes next. Here's the blunt version of where things stand. The United States was the only major tourist destination on Earth to lose visitors in 2025, even as global travel grew almost everywhere else.
Really energetic at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, we don't have the sly shops in the UK, so that's very different.
Small coffee is enough for us. Like the big ones, too much.
Do you know what? I went to Rhode Island and the seafood was really, really good. I think there was like a pollock sandwich and it was like the size of my head and it was like deep fried, and we just deep fry everything in Scotland, so yeah, it was.
Industry data from the World Travel and Tourism Council put the drop at roughly 6% for the year, an outlier in a year when country after country was posting record arrivals. That trend didn't correct itself heading into 2026 either. January arrivals were down again, and by April, overseas visits to the US had fallen more than 14% year over year. This is happening in the exact 12 months the country is supposed to be having its biggest tourism moment in a generation, with the World Cup landing across US, Canadian, and Mexican stadiums. Would you have guessed that the lead-up to the biggest sporting event on the planet would come with a tourism slump instead of a surge? Europe is where the drop is sharpest, and it's not subtle. European visitation fell around 7% in May alone, according to figures from the Commerce Department's National Travel and Tourism Office. Break it down by country, and the picture gets more specific. Germany down 12%, the Netherlands down 11%, Denmark down 10%, France down 9%, the UK down 6%, all compared with the same month the year before. And Europeans aren't a rounding error in this equation. They made up roughly 37% of all overseas visitors to the US in 2025, and they tend to stay longer and spend more per trip than almost any other group of international travelers. When that particular group pulls back, the entire tourism economy feels it. Aviation analytics firm Cirium found that advanced summer bookings from Europe to the US, bookings for the exact months the World Cup is happening, were down more than 15% year over year.
Хочу нагадати, що можуть бути провокації з боку москалів. Вони можуть взяти банери, балаклави і можуть стояти на вулицях, провокувати вас. Не піддавайтесь. Дозвольте міліції.
People aren't just grumbling online. They're not buying the ticket. So why is this happening? When the storyline everywhere else is, Europeans can't wait to see America. The honest answer has 3 separate legs, and each one is worth sitting with instead of glossing over. The first is money, plain and simple. As of the end of September 2025, the fee for the ESTA, the visa waiver authorization that most Europeans need just to set foot in the country, nearly doubled, jumping from $21 to $40. That's on top of already elevated hotel prices, airfare, and the general cost of a U.S. vacation. At a moment when European households are watching their own budgets more closely than they were a few years ago, a $40 fee doesn't sound like the kind of thing that reroutes an entire continent's travel plans until you remember it's one line item in a trip that already costs thousands. Layered onto a currency environment and cost of living squeeze that's made every discretionary dollar matter more. Would you rather absorb a small fee hike on a trip you are already excited about, or take that as one more sign to spend the money somewhere else entirely?
In Florida, a complete stranger stopped me on the street just to tell me to have a great day. In Quebec, I once said hi to someone and they looked at me like I committed a crime. I spent 24 years in Quebec and I understand the French identity is important there. I respect that. But somewhere along the way, protecting a language became more important than basic human connection. You know what I'm talking about. You walk past someone on the street, nothing. You say good morning, silence, and God forbid you say hi before bonjour. Suddenly, you're the enemy, you're judged, you're looked at like you don't belong.
The second leg is the border experience itself. And this is the one that shows up again and again in traveler accounts and government travel advisories alike. Multiple European governments, including Germany, France, the UK, and Ireland, have issued updated advisories about entering the United States, flagging stricter screening, longer processing times, and a rising number of detentions or entry denials, even for travelers holding valid ESTA approval or visas. ESTA was designed to make entry simple for citizens of visa waiver countries. In practice, a growing number of European travelers report that approval doesn't guarantee anything once they're standing in front of a Customs and Border Protection officer, who has final discretion over admission regardless of paperwork. There have been documented cases of travelers being detained and deported despite having done everything by the book. For someone who's visited the U.S. 5 times without incident, one unpredictable border experience is enough to make the 6th trip feel like a gamble instead of a vacation. And plenty of travelers are responding by simply choosing somewhere else. Layer onto that late 2025 travel restrictions affecting visa issuance for people from dozens of countries, expanded screening of applicants' social media activity, and advisories several European governments issued specifically about World Cup-related travel risks.
Oh my God, there's a hot dog stand. I still haven't got any money. Oh, there's a bank, Chase Bank. I've seen that on TikTok. Oh my God, there's Subway, they've got Subway. Look at this, Shake Shack. I mean, we've got all that stuff in England, I suppose. There's one of the grates where all the steam comes out of it, like on the movies. I've never seen one of these before.
Citing security concerns, heightened enforcement, and logistical strain in host cities, and the picture of friction becomes a lot clearer. The third leg is opinion itself, not logistics, but genuine sentiment. And this is where the story stops being about hassle and starts being about trust. Pew Research Center surveyed more than 42,000 adults across 36 countries between February and May of 2026, and the results were stark. Across the European nations polled, favorability toward the U.S. has slid. In some cases sharply. Hungary stands out as the only European country in the survey where a majority still holds a favorable view, while countries like Sweden are down near record lows. Confidence in U.S. leadership specifically has fallen even further and faster than general favorability, with double-digit point drops in several countries compared with the year before. A separate Eurobarometer tracking poll found positive views of the U.S. among EU citizens dropped from 47% in October 2024 to just 29% by the following spring, an 18-point collapse in under 6 months. That's not a rounding error in a poll. That's a continent changing its mind, in real time, about a country it used to take for granted. None of that means Americans on the ground have gotten less hospitable, and it's worth being precise here instead of painting with a broad brush. The people working the front desk of a hotel in Nashville or running a diner in rural Ohio haven't changed. What's changed sits one level up in policy, in cost, in how a trip feels to plan and to complete before a European traveler ever lands. That distinction matters, because it's the difference between a story about individual character and a story about systems and incentives, and only one of those is actually supported by the data.
In the building, okay? So I'm gonna do this right here before we close out, all right? My name is Adriana. Hold up, hold up, hold up, hold up.
It's also worth being fair to the other side of the ledger, because the picture genuinely is more complicated than everyone hates America now. Even amid an overall favorability slide, individual travel experiences reported by Europeans who do make the trip are frequently warm, friendly locals, impressive scale, generous portions, big skies, and bigger highways are still exactly what visitors describe when they get there. The stereotypes about American openness at the personal and human level haven't been disproven by any of this. What's changed is the calculation before the trip even happens. Is it worth the cost, the hassle, and the current climate to go find that hospitality in person? For a rising number of Europeans in 2026, the answer has been no, not never, just not this year, or not without a clearer reason to justify it. That reason was supposed to be the World Cup. Tourism officials have been counting on the tournament to reverse the slide, banking on German, French, and Dutch fans flooding into host cities across the summer. So far, the data doesn't support that bet, paying off. Bookings for the exact months the tournament spans are down double digits from the year before, not up. It's possible late bookings shift that picture as kickoff gets closer. Sports tourism often books later than leisure travel, and fans sometimes wait to confirm their team has qualified for the knockout rounds before committing to flights. But as of now, the World Cup hasn't been the tourism reset the industry hoped for. It's landed in the middle of a slump instead of causing a surge. There's an economic cost to all of this that's easy to lose in the abstract talk of percentages. Foreign visitor spending in the U.S. fell in 2025, even before the sharper 2026 decline set in, and international tourism supports an industry valued in the trillions of dollars and tens of millions of American jobs. When European visitors specifically pull back the highest spending, longest staying overseas segment of hotels, restaurants, and small tourism-dependent businesses in gateway cities feel it first and most directly. This isn't an abstract diplomatic story. It's local jobs and small business revenue in the cities that were counting on a World Cup bump. And it's not one-directional. Either. This is a genuinely two-way cooling, not just Europe souring on America.
Своїх голосів, як наші бійці не жаліють свого життя. Не жалійте свого одягу. Ми з воплем під дощем, наші військові мерзнуть в окопах.
American interest in visiting Europe has dipped too, driven partly by cost and partly by a documented rise in Americans feeling self-conscious traveling abroad amid the same geopolitical tension. Surveys have found a meaningful share of Americans reporting discomfort about how they might be perceived overseas right now, and outbound bookings from the U.S. to Europe fell in the same window European arrivals to the U.S. were falling. Would you rather travel somewhere you love despite feeling a little judged for where you're from, or stay home until the temperature cools down? Plenty of travelers on both sides of the Atlantic are answering that question the same way right now. Not yet. So where does that leave the story everyone assumed was true? The idea that Europeans, exposed to America during a World Cup summer, would fall back in love with the place. It's a good pitch, and it may still happen in pockets. One traveler, and one great personal experience at a time. But it isn't what the data says is happening at scale in 2026. What's actually happening is more interesting, if less flattering. A continent doing cost-benefit math on a country it used to visit without thinking twice, and increasingly deciding the math doesn't add up the way it used to. That's not a story about hospitality or scale or portion sizes. It's a story about policy, price, and trust. And how quickly all three can shift a relationship that took decades to build. Before you go, it's worth sitting with the actual question underneath all of this. Is this a temporary dip that a great World Cup and a policy reset could reverse within a year or two? Or is it the start of a longer recalibration in how the rest of the world thinks about visiting the United States? Nobody, not the tourism boards, not the airlines, not the pollsters, has a confident answer yet. If you want to keep following this story as the numbers come in through the rest of the World Cup summer, hit subscribe and turn on notifications so you catch the next update. This video draws on publicly available government tourism data, industry reporting, and public opinion polling from sources including the U.S. Commerce Department's National Travel and Tourism Office, the World Travel and Tourism Council, Pew Research Center, the European Commission's Eurobarometer, and aviation analytics firm Cirium, current as of mid-2026. Tourism and sentiment figures shift month to month, and individual travel experiences vary widely regardless of broader trends. This video reflects aggregate data and reporting at the time of publication, not a claim about any individual traveler's experience or any single country's policy in full. It's shared for information and discussion, not as travel, legal, or immigration advice.